When a woman distances herself from you and begins to ignore you, it's not always about the silence. It's about everything that silence represents. Her withdrawal is not random. It's not a game. It's not something she does because she's bored or wants attention. That distance is the product of countless moments where she felt unheard, unseen, and undervalued. It's the final echo of all the words she swallowed instead of speaking, all the tears she wiped away alone, and all the times she convinced herself to stay when she should have walked away. Understand this. Women don't just wake up one morning and decide to shut the door. Emotional disconnection happens slowly, almost invisibly, while you think everything is fine. She starts talking less, laughing less, sharing less. She stops telling you about her day, her dreams, or her fears. You may not notice at first because she still smiles when she sees you, but that smile no longer reaches her eyes. Her silence is a language, and in that language she's telling you, I've had enough. She's telling you, I gave more than I received. She's telling you, I can't fight for a connection alone. When she distances herself, it means she's exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. She no longer has the strength to explain what she's already explained 100 times. She's no longer willing to beg for the bare minimum. And here's the truth most men don't want to hear. When she's ignoring you, she's not plotting revenge. She's healing. She's remembering who she was before she met you. She's rediscovering her worth, her boundaries, her peace. She's not giving you the silent treatment to punish you. She's protecting her energy because she finally realizes it's too valuable to waste. If you notice a woman creating distance, take it seriously. Don't chase her with empty words. Show up with change actions. Don't demand that she explain herself again. Reflect on what made her stop talking in the first place. If you love her, give her reasons to return, not pressure to return. Because here's the cold reality. When a woman's silence becomes louder than her words, you've already lost half the battle. And if you ignore that silence, lose her completely. Silence is not just the absence of sound. It's a language that carries weight, depth, and meaning far beyond what words can convey. When a woman grows silent, it is rarely accidental. It is the result of an emotional process that has been building over time, a slow erosion of trust, connection, and emotional safety. People often mistake her quietness for a phase, mood swings, or even manipulation. In truth, her silence is the echo of all the things she has already said, all the times she has already explained, and all the moments she has hoped for change. By the time she is silent, she has likely been speaking for a long time. You just weren't listening. Before a woman reaches the point of withdrawing her voice, there are usually countless small moments where she tried to express herself. And maybe she told you she felt unseen, or maybe she hinted that something was wrong. She might have shared her feelings directly or through subtle cues. A change in her tone, the way she started to hesitate before speaking, or how her laughter became less frequent. Every ignored feeling, every invalidated concern, every time you brushed her off with, "You're overthinking," was a brick laid in the wall she eventually built between you and her heart. Silence is the completion of that wall. It doesn't happen in one day, and it doesn't happen without cause. When a woman starts to speak less, it's not because she has nothing to say, but because she has realized that saying it doesn't matter. She learns over time that her words do not lead to change, that her voice is met with defensiveness instead of understanding, and that her vulnerability is not being valued. This is why silence speaks louder than anything else she could say. It is her way of telling you that the conversation is over, not because she wants it to be, but because continuing it feels pointless. Silence also reflects emotional fatigue. There is a deep kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from physical labor, but from constantly fighting to be heard in a place where your voice keeps getting lost. It's the exhaustion of pouring love, effort, and patience into someone who doesn't realize the depth of what they're receiving. And so she grows quieter, not out of coldness, because she no longer has the energy to fight for something alone. In her quietness, she is conserving what little emotional strength she has left. For many men, the danger lies in misinterpreting this silence. She's just upset, she'll get over it, or she's being dramatic, she'll come around. What they don't realize is that silence is not the beginning of a problem. It's the sign that the problem has already been there for a long time. It's a symptom of wounds that have been ignored, and it's often the final stage before she emotionally detaches completely. By the time she stops talking, she has likely already stopped fighting for the relationship in her heart. It's important to understand that silence is not a weakness. In fact, for many women, choosing silence over conflict is an act of self-respect. She understands that her peace matters more than trying to force someone to value her. She knows that her worth is not determined by how much she can endure, so she withdraws from situations where she feels consistently dismissed. This is why her quietness feels so heavy. It is filled with the weight of boundaries being drawn and the acceptance that she deserves more than what she's been given. What's ironic is that silence often makes the truth clearer than words ever could. When she stops calling, texting, or checking in, when she no longer shares her day or her worries, risks when she is physically present but emotionally absent. That is when her absence within the relationship becomes undeniable. You feel the emptiness, the shift, the loss of warmth. Her silence creates a void that forces you to notice what you took for granted. And yet, for some, this realization comes too late. The tragedy is that silence can be reversed if it's noticed early enough. It requires deep humility and genuine effort, not empty promises, not quick fixes, but a consistent demonstration that her voice matters. By the time she goes quiet, must understand that she is not waiting for another apology. She's waiting to see whether you're capable of change without her having to beg for it. If you can't, then her silence will grow deeper. And eventually it won't just be temporary, it will be permanent. Her silence is a mirror reflecting back everything you've done and everything you failed to do. It's not meant to hurt you, it's meant to protect her. But if you ignore what her silence is saying, you will one day realize it was her final attempt to make you see the truth. And once she walks away in that silence, you will understand just how loud it really was. When a woman begins to ignore you or create distance, the first assumption many people make is that she is being cold, manipulative, or trying to punish you. In reality, for most women, that distance is not about inflicting pain. It's about self-preservation, is about protecting her peace after realizing that staying emotionally available to someone who continues to overlook her needs is a form of self-betrayal. She's not trying to teach you a lesson. She's simply choosing to protect her heart from further damage. Emotional energy is not infinite. She can give nurture, listen, and support. When that energy is repeatedly drained without being replenished, she begins to feel depleted. That's when the instinct to step back kicks in. Distance becomes a shield, a way to create space between herself and the source of her emotional exhaustion. It's not born out of cruelty, but from a deep need to restore balance within herself. In the early stages of a relationship, she might have been open, warm, and endlessly giving. She might have given her time, her attention, her affection without hesitation. But if over time she realizes that her effort is not being matched, that her love is being taken as a given rather than appreciated, she starts to feel undervalued. It's in these moments that her mind starts to shift from how can I fix this to how can I protect myself from this. That shift is powerful, and once it happens, it's not easy to reverse. This kind of emotional distancing doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual and it's often invisible at first. She may still respond to your messages, still be polite, still share the same physical space, but emotionally she begins pulling back. You might notice fewer details about her day being shared, fewer smiles that light up her eyes, fewer moments where she initiates contact. This isn't her trying to make you chase her. This is her trying to reclaim her sense of control and peace in a situation that has left her feeling powerless. Distance, in this sense, is a form of healing. It's her way of stepping out of a space where she feels unappreciated so she can remember her own worth. Without that distance, she risks staying in an emotional cycle where she gives more than she receives, where she constantly explains her feelings only to be met with minimal effort in return. By pulling away, she is reminding herself that she doesn't have to be accessible to someone who doesn't truly value her. Some people misinterpret this as a temporary mood or an attempt to get attention. There's looks, but that's a dangerous misunderstanding. This isn't about her craving your sudden affection or sweet words after neglect. It's about her creating boundaries that allow her to breathe again. And if you think her distance is just a game, you're missing the truth. By the time she's creating space, she's already been emotionally hurt enough to know she needs it. Looks, when she ignores your messages or doesn't respond the way she used to, it's not necessarily because she's found someone else or because she doesn't care. Because she has stopped prioritizing you in the same way she once did. She's redirecting her energy toward things and people who don't drain her. This can be friends, family, hobbies, career, simply herself. That shift isn't about spite. It's about survival. Her silence and distance are actually a mercy in disguise. It's her way of choosing peace over conflict. Instead of screaming her frustration or listing every disappointment she's endured, she simply steps back. This is far more powerful than an argument because it sends a clear message. I will not keep pouring into something that doesn't pour into me. If you ignore this message, the distance will only widen until eventually there's nothing left to save. The most painful part for many men is realizing too late that her distance was never about punishment. It was a warning. It was a sign that she was reaching her limit. Patience and resilience were running out, and because they dismissed it as drama or moodiness, they failed to address the underlying issues. By the time they understand that her space was a cry for self-respect, she has already built a new life that doesn't include them. The truth is, when a woman distances herself, she is prioritizing her own mental and emotional health. She is choosing to live without the constant anxiety of wondering if she matters to you. She is deciding that her heart is worth protecting, even if it means walking away from someone she once loved deeply. And while you may see this as her pushing you out from her perspective, it's about pulling herself back into alignment with her own value. If you ever find yourself on the receiving end of this distance, the worst thing you can do is accuse her of playing games or demand that she close the gap without taking responsibility for why it exists. The right response is to reflect, not react. Ask yourself what made her feel the need to protect herself from you, and then be willing to do the work to rebuild trust. Because once a woman learns how peaceful life feels without constantly fighting to be heard, she will never willingly return to a place where she felt unvalued. Before a woman fully withdraws, the signs are almost always there, though they are often subtle enough to be missed by someone who isn't paying close attention. People often imagine that women leave suddenly, that one day they are fine and the next day they're gone, but that's rarely the truth. The reality is her exit is preceded by countless small shifts in her behavior, communication, and emotional presence. If you pay attention, you can see these signs unfolding like a slow fade. The tragedy is that most people notice them only when it's already too late. In the beginning, you might notice her words becoming shorter. Where she once shared paragraphs in her messages, now it's just a sentence or two. Conversations that used to flow naturally start to feel forced. She no longer asks you as many questions about your day, your plans, or your feelings. This isn't because she suddenly stopped caring. It's because she no longer feels her investment is reciprocated. The energy she once poured into staying connected is starting to pull back. It's not random. Another early sign is her reduced emotional availability. She might still be physically there, cooking meals, sitting beside you, answering your calls, but emotionally, she's somewhere else. You may notice her eyes wander when you speak, or that her laughter seems softer, less genuine. Where she once leaned into you for comfort, she now faces challenges alone. This isn't done to punish you, it's her way of preparing herself to rely on herself again. Then there are the little things she stops doing. She stops telling you about her dreams for the future, stops making plans for both of you months ahead, stops sharing the tiny details of her day that she used to offer so freely. She no longer asks for your opinion on her decisions, not because she doesn't value it, because she has already begun to emotionally detach from your influence in her life. These changes are quiet, almost invisible if you're distracted or complacent. They are powerful indicators that the connection is weakening. Sometimes the signs show up in how she handles conflict. Where she once argued or expressed her frustration openly, she may now let things slide. At first, you might think this is a good thing, no more fights, no more tension, but in reality, her silence during conflict is a red flag. It means she no longer believes that voicing her concerns will lead to meaningful change. She is no longer fighting for the relationship. She is simply enduring it until she decides it's time to leave. Her physical presence might also change. She may start spending more time with friends, taking on new hobbies, or dedicating herself to work in ways she didn't before. She might be home less often or seem less eager to make time together a priority. It's not that she has suddenly become too busy, it's that she is redirecting her energy towards spaces that feel more fulfilling. When her emotional needs aren't met in the relationship, she naturally begins to seek that fulfillment elsewhere, not necessarily with another person, but in places where she feels seen and valued. Even her touch can give her away. If she once reached for your hand automatically and now she doesn't, if her hugs feel shorter or less warm, if she no longer lingers in your embrace, those are physical reflections of emotional distance. Affection doesn't just vanish without reason, it fades because the connection it stems from has weakened. One of the most telling signs is her absence in moments where she would normally be present. Maybe you notice she no longer waits up for you when you come home late. Maybe she doesn't text you good morning or good night anymore. Maybe she forgets important dates or stops celebrating your wins with the same enthusiasm. These aren't random oversights. They are symptoms of her slowly pulling her heart away from you. The danger is that these changes can be so gradual that they seem insignificant at first. You might write them off as her being tired, busy, or distracted, but these moments stack up and over time they form a pattern. By the time you fully realize how much she has withdrawn, she has already been gone in her heart for a long time. And once she reaches that point, bringing her back becomes far more difficult because she has already adjusted to living without the closeness you once shared. Recognizing these signs early is not about paranoia, it's about awareness. When you notice her talking less, engaging less, or showing less emotional warmth, it's a signal to reflect on what has changed in the dynamic. This is the time to act, not by smothering her with sudden attention, but by genuinely showing up in consistent, meaningful ways. When a woman starts to pull away, it is not always because she wants to go. Sometimes it's because she no longer believes there's a reason to stay. When a woman begins to create distance, the instinct for many is to try to close that gap with words, promises of change, emotional declarations, or even grand gestures. But what most fail to understand is that by the time she has emotionally withdrawn, words alone carry very little weight. She has likely heard it all before. She has heard, "I'll do better." After every argument, "I understand." After every misunderstanding, "I'm sorry." After every disappointment. Those words, no matter how heartfelt in the moment, lose their power when they aren't backed by consistent action. It's not that she is incapable of forgiveness or that she's unwilling to believe in you. It's that she has learned from experience that words without change are just a cycle that keeps her stuck. In the early stages of a relationship, words can be powerful because there is still trust. She believes what you say because there's no history yet to prove otherwise. But over time, if your actions don't match your promises, she starts to disconnect from your words emotionally. They stop reassuring her and start reminding her of every past disappointment. So when she pulls away and you respond with speeches about how much she means to you, she may nod or even smile, but internally, she's measuring whether your actions align with what you're saying. And if they don't, your words only deepen the distance rather than bridge it. This is why, in moments when a woman is withdrawing, real work isn't about convincing her with language. It's about proving yourself through consistent behavior. It's not about one grand romantic gesture. It's about the small, daily choices that show her she matters. If she's been telling you for months that she feels unappreciated, then appreciation needs to become visible in the way you treat her. If she's felt unheard, she needs to see you actively listening and making changes based on her feelings. Without those tangible efforts, every I love you starts to feel hollow. Empty words also have a way of creating resentment. When you tell her you'll change and then go back to the same patterns, it reinforces the belief that her needs aren't important enough for you to prioritize. It tells her that you are more committed to keeping her temporarily pacified than to doing the uncomfortable work of growth. And that realization is often the point where she decides to stop trying. She understands that staying would mean accepting a love that doesn't meet her needs, and she knows she deserves more than that. For many men, this stage feels confusing. They might feel like they're saying all the right things and expressing their feelings openly, yet still she remains distant. But that's because what she's looking for at this point is not verbal reassurance. It's proof. Proof in how you show up, in how you respond during difficult moments, in how you consistently treat her when you're not trying to win her back. She needs to see that your effort isn't temporary or driven by the fear of losing her, rather by a genuine understanding of her value in your life. Consistency is the key here. It's not enough to show up differently for a week or a month and then drift back into old habits. That only tells her that your efforts were conditional, not authentic. Trust is rebuilt over time through repeated moments where you choose her needs, her feelings, and the health of the relationship over your own comfort or convenience. And while this may sound demanding, it's actually the foundation of any relationship that's built to last. If you've relied on words to fix problems in the past, understand that those same words might now have the opposite effect. Instead of reassuring her, they may remind her of how many times you've said the same thing without following through. That's why if you truly want to close the gap, focus must shift from talking about what you'll do to simply doing it. When she sees actions that match your promises, her walls will begin to lower on their own. No speeches required. It's important to remember that you're not just trying to win her back, you're trying to rebuild a sense of safety in the relationship. Safety comes from knowing that her feelings won't be dismissed, that her needs won't be ignored, and that your love is dependable even when things aren't perfect. If she can't feel that safety, no matter how many times you say, I love you, the distance will remain. Ultimately, bridging the gap with someone who has emotionally withdrawn is about showing them that their presence in your life is not something you take for granted. It's about demonstrating through your actions that you understand why she pulled away and that you are willing to be the kind of partner she can trust again. Words might open the door, but only consistent effort will keep it from closing for good. When a woman reaches the point where her silence becomes her primary response, you need to understand that it can very easily become permanent. Emotional withdrawal is not a temporary mood shift. It's a transition from caring to protecting herself. It's her way of saying without saying that she's had enough. The danger is that if this silence is ignored or dismissed for too long, it changes from a pause in the relationship to the end of it. Once she adapts to life without your emotional presence, bringing her back becomes almost impossible. At first, silence might feel reversible. You might think, she's just upset, I'll give her space, and she'll come around. But silence is not the same as cooling off after an argument. This kind of silence is the product of accumulated hurt, disappointment, and unmet needs. It's the result of too many moments where she felt invisible, unheard, or undervalued. And while space can sometimes heal in this case, space is also where she learns she doesn't need you to feel okay. That is when silence stops being a temporary boundary and becomes a permanent separation. The truth is, silence changes people. It gives her the time to reflect, to remember who she was before she felt this constant emotional strain. She starts rediscovering her own independence and strength. The more she realizes that she can find peace and happiness without the chaos of a relationship that drains her, the more she detaches. Silence gives her clarity about her worth, her needs, and whether you can meet them. If she decides that you can't or won't, then the silence solidifies into a final goodbye. Many men mistake a woman's silence for a test. assuming that she's waiting for a certain gesture or apology before she opens up again. But most of the time, by the point she's gone quiet, she's not waiting at all. She's observing. She's watching whether you even notice the shift, whether you care enough to ask what's wrong without being prompted, whether you're capable of change without her spelling it out for you yet again. If you fail to notice or act, her conclusion is simple: you were never going to change, and her silence is the proof she needed to let go. The reason silence can be final is because it's tied to emotional detachment. Once she emotionally disconnects, she no longer feels the same urgency to fix things. She no longer feels compelled to fight for the relationship because she's already fought for it in the past, and that fight was not matched. When that emotional tie breaks, it's not anger that drives her away, it's peace. And peace, once found, is something she won't willingly give up again. Ignoring her silence is one of the most damaging mistakes you can make. If you treat it as if it's nothing, if you convince yourself that she'll get over it, you are missing the reality that she's already halfway out the door. By the time you finally realize the gravity of her withdrawal, she may have already closed herself off completely. You might still be in the same house, still sharing the same space, but emotionally, she's already gone. What's often misunderstood is that silence doesn't mean she stopped caring overnight. It means she cared for too long without it being reciprocated. It's the accumulation of unspoken hurt that finally reaches a point where speaking feels useless. When she stops explaining, stops asking, stops reminding, it's because she's decided her energy is better spent on herself than on trying to get you to understand. Once silence becomes her new normal, she begins to build a life that doesn't revolve around you. She invests her time in things that bring her joy without the constant need for validation from the relationship. She focuses on friends, career, hobbies, and self-growth. In doing so, she learns that her happiness is not dependent on your presence. That realization makes returning to the old dynamic feel not only unappealing, but impossible. If you truly want to prevent silence from becoming permanent, you have to act before it reaches that point. You have to notice the small signs of withdrawal and address them early, not with empty apologies, with consistent, meaningful change. Because once she learns how peaceful life feels without the emotional noise of unmet needs, she won't come back to the version of you that let her feel lonely while she was still right there beside you. Silence, when it reaches its final stage, is not just the absence of communication. It's the closure she gave herself when you didn't give it to her. And when that happens, it's not that she doesn't hear you anymore. It's that she no longer feels the need to listen. When a woman distances herself and begins to ignore you, and it's not an impulsive act, it's a decision born from countless moments where she felt unseen, unheard, unappreciated. It's the product of love that was given freely but not nurtured in return. Her silence is not an invitation for you to chase her with shallow gestures. It's a signal that she has reached her limit. And limits, once reached, are not easily reset. The truth is, relationships do not end in one moment. They end in small, quiet ways long before the final goodbye is spoken. They end when communication stops being met with understanding, when affection stops being reciprocated, one person starts carrying the emotional weight alone, and when she chooses to protect her peace over fighting for a connection that feels one-sided. It's not because she stopped loving, it's because she started loving herself enough to walk away from what no longer serves her. If you care, you can't wait until she's silent to start listening. You can't wait until she's gone to start showing up. You must value her when her voice is still reaching you, not when you're straining to hear it from a distance. Love is not maintained through words alone. It thrives on effort, consistency, and the willingness to meet each other's needs without being begged. So if you've ever find yourself in that space where her silence is deafening, take it as the loudest cry for reflection you'll ever hear. And if she's already gone, let it be the lesson that teaches you the value of what you once had, so that if you're given love again, you'll never take it for granted. Because once a woman learns to live without your presence, she will never again settle for your half-hearted attention. Thank you for lending me your ears and your heart today. Remember, relationships are not sustained by grand moments alone, but by the everyday choices to listen, to appreciate, and to protect the bond you share. If you still have someone who loves you, treat that love like it's rare, because it is. Take care of your heart, take care of theirs, and never underestimate the power of truly showing up for the people you love. Thank you and goodbye.